Hi, this is Live with Lance at the Firefighters Museum. We're gonna practice going live here on TikTok, and I'm gonna give you a tour here at the museum that I normally give to everyone that comes in. This is the Oklahoma Firefighters Museum here in Oklahoma City. I like to start as far back in history when I give these tours and then kind of work my way forward. So Oklahoma was the 46th state. We became a state in 1907, so we're relatively new as far as the states go. So obviously there's some firefighter history that precedes us with American history. So we're gonna start as far back as we can and we'll kind of work our way forward. So follow me. So this is the oldest piece that we have in here. It's also, I would say, the most prestigious exhibit in here. Priceless, I would say. And this is 1736. That right there is Ben Franklin. So 1736, this is 40 years before the United States actually became the United States. Ben Franklin started the very first volunteer paid fire department in Philadelphia. Paul Revere was on his department. For time of frame reference, whenever he started this, George Washington was only 4 years old. George Washington also grew up to be a firefighter. Same with Sam Adams, John Hancock, Alexander Hamilton. Kind of all the founding fathers were firefighters at some point. Anyways, the way that this worked was that Ben Franklin went to Chicago and he saw how they had their fire station set up there. And he was like, I like this. I'm gonna see if I can copy and figure out a way to monetize it. So he went back home and he used to own a printing press back then, where he made newspapers. So he wrote this, it was like a 6-page article where he kind of painted this whole picture of Philadelphia burning down and people being trapped in their homes and burning alive, having to go to the roof and jump off because no one's there to save them, stuff like that. And then at the very end, he signed it underneath a fake name. And he said, by the way, if you want to be safe, then here's how you get a hold of the volunteer fire service and you can pay them and you'll be safe. So he was trying to drum up business with like a scare tactic. Ben Franklin was really good at making money, and that's why he's on the $100 bill. So what would happen is that you would pay them, and they would give you this medallion right here with the eagle. If you go to Philadelphia, you will still see these sitting outside some of the old buildings there. Or there's that plaque on the other side with the star. So you put that out front of your house. If a fire broke out, then the firefighters would show up with their ladder cart. They have the ladder carts right here. They have things like pipe poles up top, so they could pull down roofs. They had their ladders, obviously, to be able to climb up. They had their axes to knock down walls. Most importantly, they had their buckets. It's leather buckets. There's some in here too. They were called the Bucket Brigade. Their whole thing was really more so going into the house and using things like that bed key up there to disassemble your bed, because back then the bed was the most valuable item you probably had in your house. And they would remove your valuables from your home. So it was less about putting the fire out and more about saving your goods. So they'd show up, they'd look for the medallion, you had it, they would start taking care of everything. Now if they showed up and you didn't have this medallion or plaque, that means you didn't pay them. What do you think they did? They let your house burn down. That's what they did. So that's where these things called insurance companies came into play in the United States. And these insurance companies, they would follow behind the firefighters, kind of like they do now, the ambulance chasers, and they would start knocking on the neighbor's door, and they would say, hey, your neighbor's house is burning down. If you want them to save it, then you need to sign this paperwork right now and pay us, the insurance company, even more money than you would have initially to get the volunteer fire service to put out the fire. You gotta do it before the fire hits your house. So what happened is other fire departments started popping up. Other insurance companies started popping up. And everybody wanted a piece of that money, because it wasn't really regulated. So they'd all show up at the fire at the same time. And not everyone could get that signature to get the money. So what they would do is they would actually block off the water source, and they would pick out their biggest firefighters, the 2 fire departments, and they call them plug heads. And they would have a fist fight in the street, and whoever won that fist fight is whose insurance company got the signature for payment. Pretty weird, huh? There's a movie by Martin Scorsese called The Gangs of New York that came out a couple decades ago, and it actually has a scene in there that's on our YouTube that depicts the 2 fire brigades coming down, house is burning, they block off the water source, they have a big brawl in the street while Leonardo DiCaprio is robbing the house. So go check that out on our YouTube and it'll kind of show you how it was. Really bizarre. But that right there, I've been told, is Ben Franklin's helmet. I'm not sure if it's true or not. Firefighters tell a lot of tall tales, and this is stories that have been passed down to me. Right there, I've been told that's Paul Revere's Rattler, which was an early, basically alarm system. But this is definitely a valuable collection we have here. This is 1/3 of the collection that exists from that Philadelphia fire station. We have 1/3. 1/3 is at a little museum there in Philadelphia across the street from where the station used to stand. And then the other 1/3 is actually boxed up for preservation at the Smithsonian. So this is really one of 2 places to see these, and this is 1/3 of the collection. So priceless, and we have it here if you want to come check it out. So now we're going to kind of work our way forward in history, and we're talking about a hand pump here. This is a William Honeyman hand pump designed by William Honeyman. He was Paul Revere's apprentice. Now, this was in, I believe, Massachusetts. This was in Massachusetts, late 1800s. And this was, I don't know if I just said this, it was designed by Paul Revere's apprentice, his copper mill. Paul Revere was dead by this time, but his children and grandchildren were running the copper mill. Now the way that this works, you got this drafting hose here up the top. A lot of times I kind of explain it to kids as if that's a straw you put in your drink and you suck all the water into your cheeks and you take it out and you can spray your straw, right? That's how this thing works basically. You're sucking water in and you're pushing it out. So what it is that all 4 of these staffs come out. So they'll go straight across. And then it's like a giant seesaw. You can kind of see the seesaw part right here. And then you pump. The water gets sucked in through here with each pump. With each pump down, it goes out through your hose cart. Now this thing still works. We bring this out once a year with the Norman recruits down in Norman, Oklahoma. They come out here and they pump it. We put this thing at the top of the hill. There's about 20 to 40 firefighters that pump this thing. This is at the top of the hill. This hose cart is at the bottom of our hill. We have a huge hill. So they have gravity on their side. After about 5 minutes of them pumping this thing, they are like, we're done. This isn't fun. So it just kind of shows you how difficult it was to be able to get this thing to work. But it's a huge step up from buckets of water. It just takes a lot of work, and this is drug by hand on cobblestone streets. We actually have a couple of videos on our YouTube of the Norman recruits coming out and doing this from a few different years if you want to go and check that out and see kind of how this thing fully operates. It's pretty cool. But now we're going to get into, here's Oklahoma's. This is Oklahoma's hand pump. Massachusetts, big city. Oklahoma, still Native American territory at this point. This is what they had because they didn't really have big buildings. So now we're getting into Oklahoma history. And that's going to start here with the horses. The horses are named Don and Sam after the guys that kind of started this place back in '67. The horses don't bite, so don't worry about it. But they were used to pull the steam pump. This picture we have right here is Muskogee. This is the same steam pump from the picture. It has just been repainted because firefighters love to paint things red, but this is the same one from the picture. I also found a video through the Library of Congress archive from 1940s of this sitting out front of the Stillwater station. So it's been around for a long time. The way that it worked was, I'm sure you've seen, the Mickey Mouse cartoons where he's shoveling coal and the coal makes the trains go. That's the same way this thing works, except for instead of pushing a vehicle forward, what it's doing is it's pushing this to be able to pull the water in and spray it. So it would actually keep hot coal in this to keep just kind of fire built up, so that way they could build the fire, which builds the heat, which builds the pressure, which allows it to push. So that's what's going on here. On the other side of this, you can see a drafting hose like we had over there, and this is a much bigger drafting hose. See? They had these deals on the top right here. so they can put it inside of lakes and stuff like that and not get a bunch of twigs or shooting fish out instead of water at fire. Right there, this is where they would hook it up, their hoses, and they could spray out, and they had 2 hoses here. This thing does not work. It's the only vehicle in the museum that does not work. It's missing a few pieces. But I have seen ones that do work, and it just kind of looks like a giant bomb to me. So a lot of people ask about Dalmatians. Now, the Dalmatians came into play along with the horses. It was all volunteer back then, so firefighters didn't really sleep at the fire station. So they would have to leave the horses alone. And horses are a lot like humans. They get depressed, they get sad. So they got the Dalmatians, which we got this little guy right here. We got them to be best friends with the horses, because Dalmatians are not scared of horses. They are also good at fighting off people trying to steal the horses, which would happen because no one was sleeping at the station. Dalmatians are also great at catching rats, which was a big deal back then. So that's kind of where they come into play. A lot of times I'll mention Paw Patrol to the kids and ask which Paw Patrol is their favorite. Some of them are trying to be funny, so they'll say Chase, but obviously we're looking for Marshall. But that's kind of the steampunk. We have this weird piece over here that's just kind of off to itself. It's a helmet from the Chicago fire, 1871, biggest fire in the United States at the time. It's the whole thing with the O'Leary cow kicking over, a little dark, kicking over the lantern and starting the huge fire. So that's just kind of a cool piece that we have here. Really prestigious. We got this. This is this is a proximity suit. This is used to fight airplane hangar fires for airplane fuel. Airplane fuel burns hotter than just about anything else, so they have to have a special suit to be able to get in there and actually fight it. Again, this is just kind of a weird little piece we have here. Right here, this is the first fire station in Oklahoma. 1869, like I said earlier, 1907 is when Oklahoma became a state, so this precedes Oklahoma. It was over here in Fort Supply, over by the Panhandle. We are down here in Oklahoma County, in Oklahoma City, so it was way up here. This was on Native American territory back then. This is the actual building. This isn't a replica. I've seen a video from the 70s of them welding a big box around this, picking up on a truck and moving it here. And the video stops as soon as they pull outside the museum, so I'm not sure how they actually got through the doors because it's a little too tall. This was mostly used to maintain law and order. That was the whole point of this building, was they would have a bell in here. If a fire broke out, you could run over, you could ring the bell, it would wake everyone up. If a kid went missing or there was a flood, they'd ring that bell and everyone in town would wake up and they would show up and be like, what's going on? Nowadays, we don't have to do that, right? We just call 911. They'll get you in touch with firefighters, EMS, police, and that's how we do it now. A lot of times I'll show kids on the tour around here how to actually press the emergency button so you can call 911, because now we don't really have landlines. That's what this deal is. First fire station, pretty cool. Right here we got water mains. These are early water mains. This idea came from whenever the Chinese were building the railroads. They brought over a bunch of bamboo, I guess just mountains of it. And they had all the bamboo hollowed out to make pipes for water. So we don't really have bamboo here. This is what we have. This just specifies it as special wood, so I'm not sure what the special wood is. But they would hollow it out with an auger through the middle. You can kind of see through here. And they would stick them into one another by chiseling it down. And as soon as the water goes through it, the water swells up and it creates a solid pipe. So back when they used to build towns, they would build towns next to water sources, obviously, because they needed water. And they would build it in a way that basically to bring the water into the town. These were above ground back then, and it wasn't until the late 1800s a firefighter in New York came up with the idea of burying these underground and creating a fire hydrant. So like I was saying prior, it was up above. I hear stories all the time of people coming in here telling me about they're still getting their water from these type of water mains because the city planner doesn't have a record of it. The old Las Vegas Strip, you know, where they built that new football stadium, they were digging down, and it turns out the old Las Vegas Strip, like the Golden Nugget and stuff like that, were still getting their water from these type of water mains, and Vegas didn't have a record of it. So that's just kind of cool. These things are still holding up hundreds of years later. So anyways, these were above ground. There was a fire, they would take a force trough, like force grease out of it. They would shove it underneath. They would take this, they could drill a hole, just like this. And then they could siphon their water out of the hole there, or water would just start spilling out, and then they would pull it out of the horse trough. Now this thing right here is called a fire plug. They would carry these with them. They would have this, and they would have the buckets of tar like we got in that Ben Franklin exhibit. They put it on there, they would tar it over, good as new. Now this right here is called a fire plug. This is a term that they still use on fire hydrants. Whenever they hook into a fire hydrant, what they say is, we're gonna tap the plug. When they hop off that fire truck, they say, we're tapping the plug. And that is a reference to this, tapping the plug. They use this type of stuff not just for water, they would use it for oil, gas, early electric, they would pull it through. There's a movie called There Will Be Blood that actually shows these things. They're using oil. It's the only movie I've ever seen that actually that has these water mains. Chase Bank, if you can picture Chase Bank's logo, it's a circle with a square in it. That logo is actually looking at one of these water mains from this angle because they got their start making these things. So just a little interesting piece of history. We have the Guinness World Record. We don't actually have the Guinness World Record, but I do believe if we were to file for it, we would have the record for the biggest firefighter patch collection. The current record is a chief in Ohio that has like 8,000 something patches. We have about 6,500 on our wall. We got probably another 6,000 to 8,000 in back. So I think we have it beat by about 4,000 if we were to ever file for it. You can search right here. If you ever come to the museum, you can search our patch collection here. We have all these trucks here. A lot of times I don't go over the trucks. There's information you can read about them and some QR codes. You can watch some videos we've done here on a few of them. But we do have a really nice truck collection, and these they all run. But usually when I give the tour, I kind of go over here to the bunker gear. Pre-World War II, post-World War II, early 70s. All of these were made with duck feathers. Now what makes duck feathers special? They're waterproof. Water just bounces off of ducks. They can't get wet. The reason that's important is because if you are wet and you're near a fire, that water on you is going to turn to steam and it's going to burn you. So firefighters just couldn't be wet and be near a fire. Had to bounce off of them. So that's kind of what these were. They were basically glorified raincoats. So prior to the 70s, firefighters didn't really go into burning buildings as often because they couldn't. They didn't have the gear to do so. So it wasn't until the late 70s they started adding Kevlar in. Now Kevlar is used for bulletproof vests, but it also makes you fire resistant. So firefighters could start kind of going in around the late 70s. And it's when they had to start using the masks for air. And that's where these air tanks, the SCBAs, come into play, is because they would have to be able to breathe while they're inside the fire. Now the mid-80s is where they came up with this. This is still what they use today. It hasn't changed much in the last 40 years. But they're still not fireproof. Firefighters can only take direct flame on them for about 20 seconds before they start to burn. So firefighters have got 20 seconds with fire on them before it will burn through their gear. I kind of like to point out to people that we went all the way to the moon in 1967. We went to the outer space in 67. We went to the moon in 69. So we sent people all the way to outer space sort of safely. A good decade and a half before we ever sent them into a burning building sort of safely. So it just kind of demonstrates how, with mankind, the thing that took us the most time to overcome, even more so than space travel, was fire. So that's kind of how that goes. Now, yeah, breathing in there, prior to the 50s, a lot of the stuff you had in your home was wood, steel, stuff like that. And then around the 50s, they started adding a lot of stuff with plastics. Now, plastics burn way differently. They're way blacker. It's way more poisonous. The fumes, it's just more cancerous. Everything about the plastic is just way worse. It's carcinogens. And so that's why being able to breathe in there is so important. Now, we have every October for the firefighters. I've been here for about 5 years, and it seems like on average about maybe 5 firefighters in Oklahoma die in the line of duty each year, roughly. Now, that's line of duty deaths. We have probably, I don't know, 200 firefighters that are members with us that die every year for other reasons. If you look at those reasons, a lot of it is cancer. Most firefighters that seem to pass away, they're passing away from cancer because of those carcinogens. So that's unfortunate, and that's why it's important to kind of, what the OSFA does is they kind of lobby on behalf of firefighters, and part of that is making sure that there's safety things in place to hopefully try to lessen those numbers as time goes on. But that's kind of where all this stuff plays in. I'm going to show you the extinguishers and then the alarm box. Extinguishers. So these are early extinguishers. I like to show these after the bunker gear. So this right here is a chemical called carbon tetrachloride. Same with these down here. These would be underneath your grandma's sink, and she would take one if there was a fire and she'd throw it on. It sucks the oxygen out of the room is what carbon tetrachloride does. These right here, they would break at a certain point, kind of like the water system we have in here. At 155 degrees, these springs break up and they break the glass. Carbon tetrachloride down, sucks the oxygen out of the room, same thing. Now, I mentioned this after the bunker gear because like I said, prior to the 1970s, firefighters didn't really go into buildings to save people because they couldn't. So prior to the 70s, you really wanted to have one of these with you, so at least you had a fighting chance to get out of your house if there was a fire, because no one's coming in probably. If you had these at your house, I would definitely get rid of them. They're super poisonous. But that's kind of early extinguishers. The water systems up here, like most places have. A lot of times in the movies, you will see a fire break out, and then all the sprinklers break, and all the sprinklers start spraying down this nice water. In real life, they only break, it's whichever one gets heated up to 155 degrees. That's the only one that'll break, not like a chain reaction. And the water will actually be like super black because it's been sitting up there for 40 years. So it's nothing like the movies. So the alarm box, telegraph system. This is from 1852. These would be hanging on the side of a government building or school or just out on a pole. And they used to not have keys on them. You used to be able to just open it up and pull the alarm. But there was a certain group of people that kept pulling these fire alarms, so much so across the United States that they started putting locks on them. That group of people were kids. The kids, this is before video games and stuff, so what they did for fun was cause chaos and see fire trucks. So they put locks on it. They had to have a list of addresses on the side where you could actually find somebody that had a key to open it up. Or there was a beat cop walking on the street with a key, you could find him, open it up. Okay, so now it's open. This was designed by this was designed by Emerald Morris, the guy that created Morse code. Now as you can see right here, it's the same technology as Morse code. It's pretty straightforward. But if you were to pull this alarm, this particular box would go ding, ding, pause, ding, 2, space 1, 21. So it would ring 2, 1. So this would go to a dispatch center. This would also go to the nearest fire station. This all right here is from Okmulgee, Oklahoma. So you ring it, it goes to this thing called a repeater. All of the boxes in town are hooked up to the repeater. They can get up to 8 calls at the same moment and be able to register all of them. Hopefully that never happens. It probably never did happen, but it could happen. Now here's all the different boxes in Okmulgee that they had, right? Quite a few. 21's the fire station, we're at the fire station. I believe it was that you have one department and each department can have multiple stations. So you have the Okmulgee Fire Department, and then you have Station 1, Station 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I believe that's how this was laid out. So this would be like a Station 2 call. So you pull it. It goes ding, ding, pause, ding, 21. Dispatch gets this call. Dispatch is usually in the back of a fire station. Dispatch calls Station 2. and say, hey, did you get the call for box 21? They could say, yeah, we got the call for box 21. Okay, we're gonna send out truck 18. So station 2 sends out truck 18. Dispatch flips it right here so that that way they can keep track of it. Now let's say station 2 gets another call at box 23, but they're already out on a call. Dispatch gets that call too, and they can call station 1 and say, hey, station 1, station 2's out on a call already. We need you to cover. Send out truck 6. So station 1 could send out truck 6, and it kind of keeps the whole thing moving. Nowadays, it all goes through GPS and your cell phone. If you go to fire station, a lot of times they'll have a TV with a little cartoon fire truck. You can follow it. You know, so it's changed quite a bit. So I'll go ahead and ring it just so you can kind of see. I'm going to do the short version because it's loud. All right. So if you see when I push it, this repeater is going to spin. I want to kind of, ready? Do it again. So it goes from repeater to the board here, and also punches out. But this is how it used to work. And they have, you know, alarms everywhere now. That is pretty much the tour that I give here. We have quite a few other things. We have this Toys Through the Decade. It's been kind of worked on for the last year. We have, you know, pre-1900s wooden toys, so the cast iron of the early 1900s, into tin from the 20s, into steel from the 30s and 40s, and then you get into the plastics of the 60s and 70s. The 70s had a lot of electronics. 80s was big with die cast. And then you got 90s where it's a lot of copywritten characters like Scooby-Doo and Barbie and Smurfs. And then the Barbies, and then obviously they have comic books and books. Because that's kind of the cool thing about firefighters is that it's such an old profession. It's one of the oldest professions that's still operating today. It hasn't, you know, been phased out, and it never will be. Got a cool statue section, but we have all sorts of stuff here, like the trucks I was saying. We got poles. We got stuff you can read all about. You could spend hours in here reading stuff. If you decide you do want to come here, I'm generally here, and I can give you a tour similar to this. Exactly like this. And I'll be here. So, yeah, if you need us, reach out. The museum's open Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 4:30. And the OSFA is just across the hall. So if you're a firefighter here in the state and you need any help, just call us and we can help you. They are going to be here Monday through Friday, the OSFA is. And you can check us out online. We have a TikTok, we have a YouTube, we have Facebook. So check us out on all of those. Check out the museum and check out the Firefighters Association here in Oklahoma. And we appreciate you watching, and call us anytime.